Good evening and a warm welcome to New Money. I'm Bryan. At this program, we're focusing on the healthcare industry. And please remember that the show is pre-recorded this morning because it's our Jewish New Year, and I take this opportunity to send all my viewers who celebrate the Jewish New Year all the very best. Shana Tova, and I wish you all the best. I want to add my deep disappointment to the many voices that have spoken out against the Reserve Bank's decision not to reduce the repo rate. For the past 2 months, inflation has been well within the approved target range of 3 to 6%, while the prime lending rate remains at 10.5%. It's irrelevant that rates have been reduced by 125 basis points over the past year. The reality speaks for itself. Just looking at the statistics of those who have accessed funds through the two-pot pension system, unverified figures suggest that 60 billion has already been withdrawn by 350,000 people, of which 90% have increased these funds more than once. Only those who are currently employed and earning an income who can still put food on the table qualify to use the system. And if that's the case, one can only imagine the plight of the many South Africans who are unemployed and excluded. Turning back to interest rates, yes, high interest rates are positive for pensioners and those drawing income from investments. But for the 99% of working South Africans with debt, the pressure remains relentless. In our country, inflation is not driven by consumer demand. It's imposed on us by increase in rates and taxes, electricity tariffs, fuel costs when the rand weakens, and above all, medical aid contributions are the true drivers. Which brings me to tonight's subject, healthcare. In my view, the single greatest financial threat facing South Africa's earners, especially retirees, is the rising cost of medical aid. To put this in perspective, at an average medical aid rate, inflation rate of 8%, contributions will double every 9 years and will quadruple in 18 years. Do the maths and you will see the gravity of the challenge we face. And joining me this evening is healthcare expert Clayton Samsudin. He's Group CEO of Phoenix FSG. Clayton, good evening to have you on the program.
Good morning, Bryan.
Clayton, I made the point in a long preamble about interest rates, but one of the big drivers facing people are increases. Now we always talk about inflation rates of medical aids increasing a few percent above inflation. Mm-hmm. So we're talking inflation of 3 to 3.5%. Can we believe that medical aid rates are only going to go up 6.5%?
No, unfortunately not, Bryan. So already we see this continuing gap between what the regulator proposes in terms of guidelines and what medical schemes actually launch. So this is a gap that's we don't seem to solve this. And I just wonder at what point, can't the regulator and the medical schemes come together and, put out a reasonable, or rather almost like a middle ground type of percentage. So we keep on going with CPI, as you know, with 3 percentage points. That was always the recommendation. We now see council releasing guidelines of 3.3% plus some claims utilization, and trying to find a balance between affordability and solvency, but that still kind of leaves it open. There's no gap to say, well, we're maxing out increases at this particular point. So already we've seen one of the medical scheme launched on Thursday, Bonitas, at 8.8%. And then on Friday, we had Turnberry Gap cover at 9.5%. So, those are only 2 of the providers. Luckily, there's no double-digit increases yet. But of course, it's far above the 3.3% guideline.
Clayton, I used 8% as an example. Yeah. Doubling in 9 years, quadrupling in 18 years, which means that someone planning retirement at 50 now, at 68, is going to be paying 4 times the amount of money. That's astronomical. One of the other things I don't understand is how come not every plan increases at the same rate? Different plans increase at different rates. Is that because of too few people and members on that scheme? And is each scheme looked independently of the major scheme?
No, so every plan, every option within a medical scheme has to have its own solvency, meet the solvency rather, of 25%. So it means that your more comprehensive options would invariably attract those that need that healthcare. So those would be the older members, members that may have chronic conditions that's not part of the 27 conditions, and their utilization patterns are very different to, let's say, the younger, more healthier people that have a completely different claims pattern. So the risk pool is what determines, firstly, what that increases would be, the utilization on that option, the average age on that option, and so therefore you'd find comprehensive options would typically increase higher than, let's say, your network or what is known today as smart options.
Clayton, cross-subsidisation, the younger members contributing to the older members. The younger members aren't going into major comprehensive policies. So how does that affect premium increases going forward?
Not at all, because as I said, and as you correctly stated, you know, if you don't attract younger members on, let's say, your comprehensive options, then we sit in a situation where it's a death spiral. It's going to increase much higher than the average or the weighted average increase. Those that are healthier are going to downgrade to a lower option, which means that option loses, let's say, the more, I would say, middle-aged and healthier members, and it's just going to increase higher and higher and higher every year until you find, and we're finding that now, where it's become unaffordable for pensioners. So they too start downgrading, and that's why I'm saying those comprehensive options are in a death spiral. We see how the benefits are cut from time to time, and so members start to pay more for less cover over time. It's the only way to keep it affordable.
Well, I'm going to give Clayton just one moment to think about my next question. So Clayton, what do medical members do? What do they, how do they go about assessing? I understand Discovery have the wellness program. I think other medical aids similar have wellness programs. Obviously, keeping fit, being well, watching your weight, watching what you eat, all the things. But what is the solution? Because pensioners, you talk about downgrading, and really, it's at that time more than ever you need your pension.
Right.
I mean, what percentage of money is spent on pensioners versus younger members? Must be 60, 70%.
Yeah.
So Clayton, I know you don't have a magic wand, but I've got to put the question to you. What are you advising members? I mean, how are you assessing group schemes, group benefit schemes that you look after, which have hundreds of members? How do you don't get to those members face to face?
Well, let me start off with the employer groups. I think when you speak about group schemes. So we have situations where, I'm of the view that the proper implementation process wasn't followed. So let's say I want to give you advice on a medical scheme plan or a healthcare package, or even, let's say, a financial planning product. I do what is called an individual needs analysis, and that tells me what your needs are, and I can design a product or plan.
You're talking about your healthcare needs.
Well, either. I'm giving the example, it could happen both sides. So it could be an investment advice, for argument's sake. So I'm saying that there's an individual needs analysis that's taking place. When employer groups implement the healthcare plan or the healthcare strategy, there's no collective needs analysis. So no one's gone about understanding what are the needs of the employees, first of all. And the only way to do that is through assessing the needs of the collective. And you do that through an employee benefit survey that's going to say to you, well, based on this and together with the existing claims utilization patterns, should we introduce a second scheme? Should we include gap cover? Is there a need for primary health care? And that's how you develop the healthcare strategy. But I don't see that being done in practice. As far as employees...
So you do that?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
And then when we get to the employees, you could see them also as individuals. So now we get to the individual needs analysis, and we start by firstly assessing what is the major medical requirements. What's the level of hospitalization that you require? 100, 200, or 300%. Do you have chronic conditions? Are they part of the 27 conditions, or is it one of the 60-odd conditions? And so we carry on assessing that major medical cover. We select a plan that meets firstly the medical scheme, the major medical cover, before we go to the day-to-day cover. You'll agree with me, it's better to cover things like, triple bypass than wanting to, try and cover 500 or odd rand payment for something over the counter at the pharmacy. So that's the steps that we take. But as you know, members need to have access to or seek, I think, and employer groups, qualified, healthcare brokers that have a short-term license, so they could give advice on gap cover and primary healthcare also. I don't think that medical schemes, and I've said this so many times, is the actual solution. You need to package your medical aid with your gap cover and, of course, your primary healthcare plan. So in closing on that question, like gap cover covers the gap for major medical cover, so does primary healthcare cover the gaps for day-to-day cover. So no longer are we in a situation where you just have medical scheme and gap cover. We've moved to a healthcare package that must have those three products.
And over the long term, will that reduce cost?
Yes.
Okay. Can you get gap cover as a group?
Yes, you can.
And that, I would imagine, like group life cover would be a lot cheaper.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
as compared to an individual.
it makes perfect sense. An employer that would implement gap cover in a group, of course dependent on the demographics, but they could get a 40-50% discount than what an individual would pay. So it makes perfect sense to just offer, that particular access to a much more reduced premium via the group. The same would apply with primary healthcare. You could purchase the same level of cover but at a reduced rate, but you can't do that on a medical aid. So as advisors, brokers, like in the case of Phoenix, we can negotiate rates on gap cover and primary healthcare, but of course the medical scheme contribution is regulated.
We're going to take a break, but when we come back, I want to ask you, do you think employers are taking it seriously enough in terms of what the future lies ahead for the employees in terms of cost? We're going to take a short break. Stay tuned, and we'll be back.